Hello and welcome back to my channel. Also, this is completely irrelevant to everything. I love how I say welcome back to my channel like you've been here before. Like, what if you haven't been here before? What if you don't know me? What if you just clicked on this video and you're like, who are you? Why are you welcoming me back to your channel? I've never been here before. I don't know, that's really random. We're talking about books today. We're doing jazz hands. We are doing a book update of books that I've been reading this year. I have 7 books to share with you today. So let's go ahead and delve into this, I guess. First up, what do I have? So first up, I have Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I believe this is Rory's debut novel, if I'm correct. I don't think she has any other books out. This book is about a group of girls quarantined at their school and trapped on an island after an illness has spread amongst them, I guess is a good way to put it, called the Tox. The Tox has affected them and made them sick, and this book is basically about them trying to survive in their new world, I guess you could say. I loved how descriptive this book was. It kept me engaged. I loved the characters. I loved the writing. I also love how creative Rory is with how the Tox affected each of the girls differently, so it wasn't like a universal symptom. It all affected them differently and at different times, which I thought was really cool. I read this book back in August on my way home from New York. It was really, really good. I enjoyed it. I didn't want to put it down. I'm definitely going to be reading this again, and I'm looking forward to other books by Rory Power. I do need to mention though, it is a horror. It's kind of gruesome at some parts, so if you're kind of weary, I wouldn't read it. Next, I have The Opposite of Always by Justin A. Reynolds. I had a really hard time getting into this book at first. It took me about the first 100 pages to get into this book. I don't think it was the book. I think it was me. Once I finally got into it, I did really enjoy it, but I did have to push through like the first 100 pages. This book is about a guy who keeps going back in time to try and keep his girlfriend alive. So it's kind of like Groundhog Day, but over the certain course of months before his girlfriend dies, and he just has to find a way to keep her alive. Throughout the entire book, it was really funny watching him go back and trying to figure out how to keep her alive, but eventually it does reach a point where it's like, this is really sad, and it does kind of talk about that. So it was like a good mixture of lighthearted but also really sad. This isn't one of my favorites, I will say, but I did thoroughly enjoy it, and it does have a solid 4 out of 5 stars for me. It's not a personal favorite, but this is definitely worth reading, and it is absolutely adorable. Next, I have The Past and Other Things That Should Stay Buried by Sean David Hutchinson. If you know me and any of my reading preferences, I love Sean David Hutchinson. We Are the Ants is one of my favorite books. Like, it's up there in like the top 10. Like, that is one of my favorite books. I absolutely loved it. And so I've been going through and trying to read all of his other books as well. And I got my hands on this one. It's very small, because I got used to like We Are the Ants or like The Edge of the Universe, where those books are kind of thick. So I was kind of shocked when this book was as small as it is. This book made me feel a lot of things. It's about this kid Dino, who his ex-best friend July died, and his parents run I don't know what it's called, not really a funeral, well, is it a funeral? Yeah, there is a funeral home, but they also do like the mortician part of it, the autopsies and everything. And anyways, so they had July and she ends up coming back to life, and her and Dino are trying to figure out their differences and kind of work things out and get some closure, because she died unexpectedly. And so it delves into like their friendship and talks about where things went wrong and trying to find out a way for July to leave on a good note, basically, is the best way I could put it, which is not the best way to put it. That's what I got. And in this book, I ended up relating to Dino a lot, because this reminded me of an old friendship that I had, where my ex-best friend actually did a lot of like the really awful things that July did in this book. While she wasn't like outright the worst person alive, she wasn't a great person, and she did do some really messed up things to Dino, and there were some things in this book that my ex-best friend actually did to me. So this book brought up like a lot of old emotions for me that I wasn't expecting to have. And it's kind of obvious they didn't have the best friendship. It was like, it was pretty toxic. It could have been worse, but it was like bordering like toxic. Like, definitely was not a good friendship for either of them really to be in. I didn't really think this book was the best. I mean, I enjoyed reading it, but when I got to the end, it did kind of feel like there wasn't entirely a point to the book. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. It wasn't awful, but it wasn't my favorite. It wasn't the best. It was okay. You know, it wasn't great, but it was okay. The next book I read was And the Ocean Was Our Sky by Patrick Ness. This book is in the same style as A Monster Calls, where it's illustrated inside and really neat. This is about a war between humans and whales where they're basically hunting each other. It centers around this one whale who ends up interacting with a human and kind of talking to a human more while they have this human held captive, and they kind of go on this little journey. I don't really know how to put it. This wasn't... I sat down and I read this in one sitting because it's really small, and again, it's illustrated. It wasn't that long to get through. It was entertaining, and I love the artwork. It did talk a lot about the dangers and revenge and how easy it is for us to turn into the monsters that we were afraid of to begin with. It wasn't that bad, but it didn't have a lot of overly memorable characters. You didn't really get attached to anything or anyone. It wasn't really that emotional. It could have had a bigger emotional impact, but I went through it. I didn't really get attached to any of the characters. I was just reading it. It was a story. Got to the end and I was like, okay, that's that. It was very well written, as I love Patrick Ness's writing, but for the story itself, it was okay. Not great, but okay. I still enjoyed it, but it's definitely not the best that Patrick Ness has ever written. I gave it a 3.5 because it was like, it's solid. It had something going for it, but it just didn't have quite the effect I was expecting it to. Next, we actually have a 5 out of 5 star book, which is The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This book. This book. I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. Like, I'm not even kidding. This book makes me want to cry. Oh my gosh. It follows the main character, who was a prince, Patroclus, as he gets disowned from his family and banished from his kingdom, and it follows him as he meets Mr. Achilles, and it goes through their life together, their adventures, and oh my gosh, is it gay. It's so gay. I loved the writing in this book. I absolutely loved it. The writing was really good. The pacing had a little problems with it. It would be really fast for a while and then it would slow, and there were some parts of the book where it was really slow and it just felt like you were waiting, which makes sense because the characters were waiting. But other than that, this book was perfect. And I'm not gonna give away any spoilers, but the ending, I don't think it could have ended in any other way. The ending was perfect. This book gave me like the best amount of like contentment, happipiness, sorrow, relief, dread. It was oh my gosh, there were so many things in this book. This book, oh my gosh, it is really good. Oh my gosh, but yeah, this book is really, really gay. Honestly, I feel like a good 50% of this book is Patroclus talking about how beautiful Achilles is when he sleeps. I feel like that's 50% of this book. This book made me laugh at some parts. This book is precious. Oh, please read this book. It is so good. It's just beautiful. I have no words. This book actually did make me like full-on sob, which books don't typically make me do. I actually here insert a picture of me crying. I sent this picture, I posted on Twitter, being like, I'm fine. I finished the Song of Achilles. I'm fine. I so badly want to talk in depth about this book with someone who's also read it, because I don't know anyone personally who's also read this book. So please, if you've read this, talk to me about it, because I love it and I need to speak with someone about it so bad. I talked to a lady at Barnes & Noble about it because I got my friend to buy the book, and so we were there in line and she saw that my friend was buying this book because I was like, you have to read this book. So she bought the book, and I was talking to the lady at Barnes & Noble who's checking us out, and we talked about Patroclus and how sweet and precious he is for a bit. But please read this book. You won't regret it. It's so good. If you like Greek mythology, like this is the book for you. if you like gay and Greek, this is it. This is the book for you. Next, I don't know why, I read a lot of okay books since last time we spoke. I have Dear Martin by Nick Stone. I found this book a little odd. It felt odd to me, but I also think part of why I wasn't wowed by this book is because I had just read the Song of Achilles, which was very descriptive and meaty and intense. And this book is only about 200 pages long, and you can only do so much in 200 pages. I found the pacing of this book a little odd and the setup kind of odd. I feel like if this book had had an extra 100 pages to it, and if the setup had been a little different, I would have liked it more. But basically it's about this kid justice who decides he wants to write letters to Dr. Martin Luther King, talking about injustices he's witnessed as a young black man, and as well as seeing the different injustices that he's seen others go through. And that's what this book is about. But I found that to be a very small part of the book. So we start off with him being attacked and him deciding he wants to write letters, and the book does go through his normal life where he starts noticing more things that are happening that he kind of ignored or wasn't aware of before. But it's just set up very strangely, and it seems like such a small part of the book until about halfway through. There's also this romance that was randomly brought in, and once you reach the end of the book, you see why it was brought up, because it discusses prejudice. But the romance felt so unnatural. It felt so awkward because it was, not to give too many spoilers, but it felt like Justice just mentioned this girl and then the next day she's jumping into his arms, and it just felt really weird. This book brought up a lot of great discussions about different things that people of color face and injustices they deal with, but the actual story itself felt off. I'm also gonna say this is because I went from this very intense, descriptive, beautiful piece of literature to a very simple, not incredibly descriptive 200-page book. And the thing is, like, you can get a lot in 200 pages, but this is also, it has fairly large text and a lot of blank gaps. So there really wasn't this much in the book. I think it was worth reading, and I am going to try to read it again, but the pacing felt weird, the romance felt weird, the story felt really weird. I saw so many great reviews for this book, but then I read it, and it just felt so weird to me. I don't know. I gave it a 3 out of 5. But I really think the thing that did me in was reading the Song of Achilles and then this, because that is a big leap. So I'm thinking maybe that did it, so I am going to try to read this again. But I think also I went in with bigger expectations. I went in expecting another The Hate U Give, and instead I got 200 pages of confusion, I guess you could say. Nick Stone had like a great point with this book. Like, she was going in like a really good direction. She had a great idea. I just think if she had put another 100 pages into executing it and maybe changed the setup of the plot a little differently, it would have worked better. Does anyone else feel this way? Because I have yet to meet someone else who feels the same way about this book that I do. I just felt that it was awkward and very short. So I am going to try to read this again, but for now it's like a 3 out of 5. I don't know how I feel about it. I really don't. It brought up great discussions and great topics and a lot of great points, but it just felt odd. So the last book I have is I Wish You All the Best by Mason Deaver. And I just want to say this is a 5 out of 5 book. I loved it. I really wish that I had had this book growing up. The way that Ben feels is how I felt the majority of my life. And I couldn't understand why until I got older and I did some research on my own. But if I had had a book like this when I was like 13, it would have helped me so much. It would have made things so much easier. I would have felt so much more less alone. This book is about the main character, Ben, who is non-binary and ends up being kicked out of their house and having to move in with their sister and readjust to life and getting through their last year of high school. And this book hit me because while I'm not non-binary, I am trans, FDM, and Ben talking about dysphoria, talking about so many things, like, really, like, hit me. And I've never, I hadn't come across a book yet where this topic was talked about, or where the main character felt like I have most of my life. This book deals with Ben having to navigate high school and coming out while also being non-binary and not wanting to come out. It's not super intense, it's a contemporary, and it's comforting. It's a comforting book is the best way I could put it. I just really enjoyed it. I really loved it. Mason Deaver's going to Y'all Fest. I'm looking forward to meeting them and thanking them for this book. I'm also looking forward to Mason Deaver writing more books because I really enjoyed their writing style. It's just, So those are the books that I've read between the last time we caught up versus now. Right now I'm reading Again But Better by Christine Riccio, and I'm really enjoying this book so far. I'm not that far into it because I haven't had time to read, but I'm really enjoying this book. Like, this book has actually made me laugh out loud a few times, which is incredibly rare. If a book actually makes me physically cry or actually laugh, that says something, because books don't normally make me laugh, but this book has made me laugh out loud in public. I'm really enjoying this and seeing where this goes. And Christine Riccio actually is a booktuber, makes booktube videos, which you probably know if you're here watching this and you've come from the booktube community. But I'll put a link to her YouTube channel in the description because she's really funny. Thank you for joining me for my book reviews. Tell me what you think about my book reviews, I guess. Or tell me what you think about these books in general. I'm gonna go, but thank you for joining me. I hope you have a good day and a good week. Yeah, I'll see you next week for another video, but if you like this video, you should give it a thumbs up. Check out my other videos. I have a lot of book videos. We have fun here on this channel, I think. But thank you for joining me. Like, genuinely, thank you for joining me and dealing with my talking and rambling. I appreciate it. But yeah, talk to me about these books if you read them too, because I want to hear other people's opinions. Alright. I never do that again. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Okay, bye-bye.